Welcome, everybody, to a very special edition of Club Fantasy's No Punt Intended. I am Joshua Hudson, one of the founders, and no Joe this week, unfortunately. That's why you're seeing my not-so-pretty mug. But I had to take the reins because Ryan just flubs these intros so bad that I have to do my best to try to make it somewhat reasonable. So, with that being said, this is the 300th episode of No Punt Intended. So as a result, I had to bring in one of our favorite guests that we've ever had on this show. The last few years, though, we've always brought him on for our team preview shows very early on because his favorite team is so bad that that's just where it fell on the schedule. Well, there's hope this year as we preview his New York Jets, the New England Patriots, and the Green Bay Packers. Yes, folks, I am talking about Mr. Howard Bender. Let's hit some music and get into the show.
Welcome in. What is up? It is No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. I am your host this week, relieved of intro duties because everybody knows I'm going to get it wrong. It's Ryan Weiss. With me is Josh Hudson. No Joe Zolo this week. He is off motorboating the Missouri River or whatever the hell he does for a living. But it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful show. We have, as Josh mentioned, one of our favorite guests. But before we get into that, Josh, how you feeling tonight, buddy?
I am doing fantastic. It's always weird energy sometimes when we pre-record these shows because we don't have the comments going. And it's just like, hey, we actually have to follow a show sheet for a change. And then we get a little lost because we never do that because the comments are always so great. So
well, I was going to say it's a double win because I'm hosting, which means we were going to follow the show sheet anyway. Because when it's Joe and live, it's pure chaos at that point. Yes. As Josh alluded to in the intro, we have one of our favorite guests. This week we are covering the Jets, the Patriots, and the Green Bay Packers. And we're covering the Jets. It's pretty clear who our guest is. It's Howard Bender from Fantasy Alarm and Sirius. Howard, welcome back to the show. How are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty well, guys. How are you? It's great to be back here on the show. Always a pleasure to get to join you and chop it up a little bit.
Love it.
Yeah, we couldn't have picked a better guest. I know Josh had this one circled as the 300th episode, and we just enjoy having you on. And finally,
is the 300th episode?
This is the 300th episode.
Oh, man. Now the pressure's on. Now I don't even know what I'm going to do.
You were going to bring the heat regardless, but I was going to say, for the first time in a long time, you're not on one of our first episodes talking about all bad teams because your Jets actually played football this year. So it makes life a little easier for you, and we get some fun teams to talk about.
Yeah, you know, it is actually, it's a good time to be a Jets fan, I suppose. Obviously, though, the pessimistic Jets fan in me is wondering, when's the other shoe going to drop? It's all the rah-rah, kumbaya, happiness, lollipops, rainbow, and sunshine.
Yeah.
And Aaron Rodgers is a big chip on his shoulder. So what's going to be the pessimism in me?
Taylor Swift concerts, he'll do okay.
Is that a fact? Is that how this works now?
I don't know.
Who knew Rodgers was a Swiftie? Listen, you know what? We talked about that on the Fantasy Alarm show at SiriusXM. Our producer, Shan Blunt, just went to the Taylor Swift show in Pittsburgh. So she hijacked our Jukebox Monday with nothing but Taylor Swift songs. And listen, we've all seen the footage of Rodgers. He's loving on it.
Exactly. I too am a fan of Taylor Swift. I'm not as far as to call myself a Swiftie, but I do enjoy her music. So I'm okay with it. And if it means Aaron Rodgers and the Jets are going to play better, I'm all for it. So, as Josh alluded, this is not a live show, as you've probably figured out by now. So feel free to continue to drop your comments, and someone from Club Fantasy will still answer any questions or anything that you throw into the chat. But live on air, it's not going to happen because you're not live with us, plain and simple. So we're going to start the show off with Howard's Jets. Last year, they went 7-10. They're bringing back their head coach, but did bring in a new offensive coordinator. So while Robert Saleh is still there, Nathaniel Hackett from his Green Bay Aaron Rodgers days leaves Denver in a disgrace, ends up over with the Jets. QB1 is going to be Aaron Rodgers. Running back 1 is Breece Hall with Michael Carter or Israel Abanikanda backing him up. There's going to be some debate as to who's going to be the true RB2 there. Wide receiver 1 is, I think, the one that gets everybody's pants tight, Garrett Wilson. Wide receiver 2, Allen Lazard with Corey Davis and McCole Hardman and Randall Cobb. Josh went 5 deep on the Jets.
Hey, look, if Rodgers is going to bring his buddies to New York, we got to show a little bit of respect.
I was going to say, I don't think we've went past 4 deep anywhere. We're going 5 deep to get Randall Cobb.
We only named 2 of the Titans. So.
Exactly. Tight end 1 is Tyler Conklin with CJ Uzomah backing him up. And as the show starts, we start with my guy. So there's some agreement here, a little bit of disagreement. Bender and I both have Garrett Wilson. So Josh has Breece Hall. Howard, I'm going to go ahead and let you get started. How are your feelings about Garrett Wilson this year?
I mean, listen, I think that Garrett Wilson is in a great spot because he's got a strong passing quarterback right now. He's got a guy who's got a cannon of an arm, who's going to be able to get the ball downfield to him if he wants. He's going to be able to, as long as these guys, spend a lot of their time together on the field. Like, it was very encouraging to see Aaron Rodgers show up for OTAs. It was very encouraging to see him in mini camp and see that he's working. Maybe he does have a little chip on his shoulder and he's, and he's looking to prove to Green Bay that he did wrong, but he needs to make sure that he's in sync with Garrett Wilson, because that is his primary weapon. I love Allen Lazard also, but that he's a security blanket, and that's, I don't mind seeing Rodgers go to him early, but he needs to hone the timing with Garrett Wilson. I just think Garrett Wilson is such a just a phenomenal entity. He's a solid route runner. He's got great hands. He's got great speed. He can pick up yards after the catch. I mean, these are all the things that you want in a wide receiver 1. So to me, he's the best offensive weapon outside of Rodgers that the Jets have, and I'll be drafting accordingly.
Yeah, I think he's the first round wide receiver Aaron Rodgers has played with in his career, right? Because I know it was notorious that Green Bay had never drafted one. So this is a big move for him to have Garrett Wilson. I think one of the things that is completely being understated here is how bad the Jets QB play was last year, that even a getting older Aaron Rodgers is likely to improve that. And I think one of the places we're going to see it most is going to be catch rate. Aaron Rodgers is notoriously one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL. Garrett Wilson only caught 56% of the passes that were thrown his way last year. If we see that come to a normal 62, 63% level, that's going to be great for his fantasy prospects. But I think Davante Adams, and I'm not saying Wilson is Adams or to that level yet, but he could get there. Davante Adams was catching 70% of his passes from Aaron Rodgers sometimes. And if we see that kind of growth from Garrett Wilson, we're talking top 5, top 1 wide receiver type numbers.
Yeah, I mean, and with that hideous quarterback room that was the Jets last year, I mean, when he played with everybody but Zach Wilson, his fantasy production was top 10, top 5 most weeks. And it was like barely top 40 with Zach Wilson. So now you take all of that out of the equation. You bring in Aaron Rodgers. I mean, a bad Aaron Rodgers season last year, he threw 26 touchdown passes.
Yeah.
I don't think the Jets have had anything close to that in 10 plus years.
No, they haven't. But I think what you also kind of have to, I mean, I don't want to just, piss in everybody's Cheerios here, but I don't see him. Aaron Rodgers force-fed the ball to Davante Adams because that was his guy.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see that kind of force-feeding targets to him, and we have to see, who emerges. We know that there's going to be a comfort factor with Lazard. They brought in McCole Hardman. Who the hell knows if Corey Davis actually stays with the team or he does anything. I'm not really caring too much about Randall Cobb or Denzel Mims or any of the other names that are there, but while Garrett Wilson might be the best wide receiver, I think that Rodgers is likely to spread the ball around a little bit more. I mean, yes, Wilson will probably see the majority of targets, but I don't see him getting that like Davante Adams level.
Well, Howard, I think
Definitely
that lends
saying
itself
all the right things in camp.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. So we're seeing all this insane peppering, all these comparisons to Davante Adams, and I think everybody naturally wants to make that leap. And that was the literal next question I was going to ask you is how do we see kind of that target distribution? And, Green Bay didn't quite have a Breece Hall. Now we don't know which Breece Hall we're going to have, but the Jets and Robert Saleh may want to rely a little bit more on the run than what we saw the volume that we saw out of Green Bay. But I think this lends itself, Josh, to another game of Would You Rather. I know it's kind of become the staple of these shows, but I'm very interested in Howard's take on this because Garrett Wilson is going at the back end of the first round right now. And the great Michael Sicoli, who writes for us, just said that might not be early enough. But Howard, you're kind of saying maybe we need to temper expectations. So there's a few names he's going around that I actually want to ask you, would you rather take Garrett Wilson in fantasy right now, or would you rather take, and I'm just going to start with the player going one pick ahead of him, CeeDee Lamb. Which one of those two would you rather have on a fantasy roster, assuming full PPR?
I think I would actually like CeeDee Lamb in this situation. I do, I think that he's in a great spot for a really strong breakout season. You've got a guy like Brandon Cooks over there as, a complimentary receiver. Michael Gallup is a complimentary receiver. CeeDee Lamb is the playmaker. And I think that we're kind of in this spot right now where, CeeDee Lamb, who ironically the cover boy of the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Football Draft Guide this year.
There you go.
That's just, I kind of feel like he's in that kind of a spot. So I do love Garrett Wilson, but I would take CeeDee Lamb first.
I have Lamb ahead of him myself, Josh.
I also have Lamb ahead of Garrett Wilson. And it kind of goes to what you were talking about, Ryan. We've seen that, Rodgers kind of key in on his guy and pepper his guy with targets. We expect that to be Garrett Wilson, but we don't know yet how they're going to mesh and gel on the field. What we do know is that Mike McCarthy's offense right now in the passing game runs through CeeDee Lamb, and Dak Prescott has that comfortability with him. So I think for me, this is a pretty easy CeeDee Lamb over Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, there's a lot less learning we have to do. This one I find interesting because then the next three are very interesting, which is why I did this. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, the sun god, Howard, or Garrett Wilson.
I'm going to take Amon-Ra as well. I've got him a little higher up in the rankings as well. I think, where are we looking at with the Lions passing attack? It's, everybody's like all jazzed up because Sam Laporte is there, but you got Jameson Williams suspended for the first 6 weeks of the season. Yeah. Laporte is a rookie tight end. They've got Marvin Jones, who's like geriatric at this point.
Yeah.
And guys like Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, none of these guys move the needle at all. So, I get it. We're all excited about Jahmyr Gibbs lining up in the slot, but Jared Goff's got the rapport with Amon-Ra St. Brown in a PPR format. I think Amon-Ra gets the heavy target share.
And something I found interesting right away when it was Jahmyr Gibbs in the slot was Amon-Ra plays big slot, and they have guys they can put on the outside. So, Are they just putting him out there in 4 wide receiver sets? Because then it still doesn't really move the needle. I'm also a sun god guy. Josh, where do you stand with it?
You can definitely convince me to take Amon-Ra over Garrett Wilson, but right now I basically have them separated by 1 touchdown. And I have that edge going to Garrett Wilson. So I'll side.
Interesting. I have them separated by 1 touchdown as well, but it's the other way around. I don't know if the stats line up, but it's the ranking wise. And then this one, it was too good not to ask you guys. At 14, 2 picks after Garrett Wilson in PPR is Davante Adams. Obviously, a little bit of a quarterback situation kind of going on or developing with the Las Vegas Raiders right now, Howard.
Yeah, and you know what? And this is where I'm really on the fence. It could go either way for me. I'd probably just take Adams over Wilson anyway. I know it's probably a contrarian look, and maybe it's my pessimistic Jets fan kind of mentality with it. But Davante Adams is still head and shoulders above any other pass catcher on that Raiders team. You've got identical players in Jacoby Myers and Hunter Renfrow. Yeah. They're possession guys. They aren't big play guys at all. They're not going to be able to, they don't go downfield the way Adams can. And whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo, Brian Hoyer, who knows, maybe they even try and invest in stupid Carson Wentz. We'll see what happens there with that situation, but I'm still going to lean Adams.
I love stupid Carson Wentz. Best nickname.
He drives me nuts. That dude.
Josh, old Davante Adams or new Davante Adams?
Any Davante.
I'm still I'm still in on Adams. I have him 2 spots ahead or 1 spot ahead of Garrett Wilson. I basically have them Adams, Wilson, Amon-Ra in my ranking, 7, 8, 9. So.
And that's where I have Adams as well. It's just interesting that we all love Garrett Wilson, but is it leading to him maybe being overdrafted a little bit right now? So that's something to keep an eye on. Another thing to keep an eye on is Breece Hall's recovery. Josh, he's your guy.
With every Twitter doctor in this space that is saying, you know what? This ACL injury that Breece Hall is going through is different than what we saw Javonte Williams go through, different than J.K. Dobbins. And then looking at all of the past ACL injuries with guys like going all the way back to like Deuce McAllister and Adrian Peterson and things of that nature. The one thing that I've taken away from this is that the tear, the ACL tear itself was different. It was a clean tear. There wasn't any residual effects to the meniscus, the PCL, the LCL, every other CL of whatever that I don't know about because I'm not a Twitter doctor.
So you mean not Javonte Williams, plain and simple.
Correct, yeah. Who just basically needs a whole new knee at this point. But, you don't love the fact that he only played 7 games last year. But the one thing you can definitely like, you're going to hear my cat in the background because I'm staying at my mom's house. So this is going to be a fun show.
Obviously, a big fan of Breece Hall.
Right? She's
don't be
talking to the point.
Don't be talking smack about my boy Breece.
It was the first year, so, but you love the efficiency, right? 5.8 yards per carry, 11.5 yards per reception. Those are all numbers that you can get behind. His athletic RAS score of 9.96 was better than Adrian Peterson coming into the league. And we saw how well Adrian Peterson was able to bounce back from his late season ACL tear. So I think all of the stars right now are aligning. I mean, this guy played 7 games and still led the Jets in both 10-zone carries and 5-zone carries. Like, they will use him inside the 10-zone, the 5-zone for those coveted rushing touchdowns that he will need to get into the top 10 at his position. The one thing that I do love as well, he was on pace for 75 targets as a running back. And that can play well in a Nathaniel Hackett system. You saw what Aaron Jones was able to do as a running back in a Nathaniel Hackett offense. Javonte Williams, for one great game, had 11 targets, I think was the ceiling there. They have zero issue targeting the running back. Michael Carter is fine as a pass catcher. He has absolutely zero explosiveness. All the reports that they're talking about is how Israel Abanikanda has that giddy up, that explosiveness. So they might he might be the guy that usurps Carter, and Carter's the odd man out in this duo. And they're just going to go full speed with Hall and Izzy as the 1-2 punch there, in which case they're going to throw to Breece Hall, not Abanikanda. So I think the stars are aligning for Breece Hall to end up with an RB1 ceiling. His ADP right now, I believe, is RB11 consensus for Fantasy Pros. It's RB8 on Underdog, but you can see a path. Like where I have him in my projections, he's basically grouped with guys like Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, just above guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, Travis Etienne. Like he can get that high. And I only have him at 204 carries. So imagine if he ends up taking, more from like Zonovan Knight or more from Michael Carter. If he ends up with 230 rushing attempts, he's a top 5 running back, no question, in my opinion.
Man, that is super bullish. Super bullish. I mean, listen, from your lips to God's ears, make that happen. I'm 100% in for it. But I'm hedging a little bit. I don't like the reports that we're getting out of camps, about, his progress, like all of a sudden it was like, he'll definitely be around for week 1. We don't know when he's going to come to camp. And now we don't know if he's going to be ready for week 1. So how far into the season are we going to push it when you have a stable running back room behind him? Is he going to be back early on in the season? Could he be back week 3, week 4? If that's the case, can we get away with
Abanaconda.
Thank you. Is Michael Carter going to get mixed in? Is Zonovan Knight going to be mixed in? I thought it was very, very telling that when the Vikings released Dalvin Cook, that the Jets actually had the best odds. They were at like plus 600 to acquire to sign Dalvin Cook. Everybody was all Miami. Miami and Dallas were actually plus 650 to sign Dalvin Cook. So I don't know if those numbers have changed right now, but I think it's very telling that the Jets, who do have cap room, could very well grab Dalvin Cook. And if they did that, then there's no rush to bring Breece Hall back. Let him ease his way into the season. And then I kind of worry then as far as that goes, if you're the Jets and you're competing, do you just run Dalvin Cook into the ground and kind of work Breece Hall in? Because you're only going to sign Dalvin Cook for a year. You're not going to give him a long-term deal if you've got, Breece Hall in the wings. So that's the only thing that makes me very nervous about it. Vegas odds telling me that the Jets are in on Dalvin Cook, which makes me worry about Breece Hall.
So I'll share with you, Howard, kind of my thought process when I did my projections here. I have the Jets at about 454 rush attempts. So the way that I divvied up the pie here, I was trying to account for kind of that early season like ramp up. So I gave Izzy 40 carries. I gave Zonovan Knight 43, and I think I'm going to shift more of that towards Izzy. I gave Carter at 117 and Hall at 204. Because I think that by the time things get ramped up, his season average will probably still only be about 11, 12 carries a game, even if by the end of the season, he's well above 15 rush attempts per game. Does that make sense?
It does make
sense.
Fair
enough.
You've baked it. You've baked my worry into your projections is what
there
you're
you
saying.
go. See? Got you, buddy.
Here's my question. And Howard, you may know this better as a fan of the Jets, or Josh, you may know this better as a fan of analytics. If it's not Hall, because I've been told by smart people that Israel Abanaconda is not a pass blocker, and I know they're going to need to protect Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers is not going to allow a guy who can't pass block on the field. While he doesn't have the explosiveness, does that lend itself to Michael Carter, who has played the more traditional third down role more in his career?
I think it kind of does. I mean, if it's all about the pass blocking and Carter's the better one of the two, yeah, Aaron Rodgers definitely won't definitely won't tolerate it.
No.
That's another reason why I think they just make the investment in Dalvin Cook, because Cook's a solid pass blocker as well.
Precisely what was going through my head when you brought it up. I hadn't even seen that they were the favorites, but I'm like, that just screams, get me a veteran in here who I know can protect my ass.
Yeah, exactly.
Could very well be, yeah.
We're going to finish up the Jets here with Joe's sleeper is Allen Lazard, which I found interesting. I went and looked. He's going off the board as the wide receiver 51 and the overall 110th player. So you're getting him around the 11th round for someone who you've heard everyone on this show mention is probably going to be Aaron Rodgers' favorite for what it's worth. That's really late to get a really good player. And then IDP player of note is Quinnen Williams, which might be the only nose tackle outside of Aaron Donald that we're going to feature on this list. He had a hell of a year last year with 12 sacks. And he's
good.
Yeah, great football player. Nose tackle is a tough one to play in IDP fantasy because you never quite know if they're going to see double and triple teams. And if they're not named Aaron Donald, that could be a problem. Joe, I'm guessing just taking a personal shot at Howard at this point. His bold prediction is that the Jets go 1-5 in the division and miss the playoffs, assuming Tua is healthy for both games against Miami, and goes as far to say that New York's only win will be against Joe's Patriots in New York. So
I think it's more of a shot at just the Jets as a whole because he is a Patriots fan. But
yeah, it's all right. It's all right. It's all right. Let me fix
Joe typically likes to be on when we do the Patriots. It just happened to fall.
Oh, sorry, Joe. What a shame.
We miss you, buddy.
Oh God.
Now, Josh loves to tie one segment for every team into our guest. And Howard, you are notorious for your love letters. And so our question to you is, who is your love letter? Who are you writing to for the New York Jets?
All right. Well, I've prepared full love letters. I mean, they're more abbreviated than what we usually do on the show.
You got the music going for you and everything, buddy. I put in a phone call.
Well, here you go. Dear Aaron Rodgers, welcome to the pressure cooker, my friend. If you thought it was tough in Green Bay on social media or wherever else your mug has been plastered, well, wait until you get to New York during the regular season. Despite the fact that you're now being dubbed a savior by many fans, as we haven't seen a strong QB performance since Vinny Testaverde in 1998, and even that was pushing it, Jets fans have suffered long enough, and we can be a very unforgiving group of a-holes. It's up to you to be the professional, the future Hall of Famer, and let any and all criticism roll off like water off a duck's back. If you can't, then you may as well fake a training camp injury now and head into retirement. We don't have time for your nonsense, your stupid darkness retreats, or the fact that you're probably the only person to have ever done ayahuasca and come out less cool on the other side. We want wins, Aaron. We want a strong performance each and every week, and we don't want any bullshit excuses. You could have just walked off into the sunset and retired, and none of us would have begrudged it. But you stayed, and now you've now willingly put yourself in the crosshairs. Don't disappoint, or you're donezo. Love, Howard Bender.
Perfection.
Yes, absolutely.
No, that is amazing. I'll give Josh a second to kill the music. And we're going to move on from the Jets, fittingly, to Joe's New England Patriots. So we bring Howard on for some better teams, but then we make him talk about a hated division rival. So
it's okay. For Joe, I'll do anything.
Hey, there you go. Let's make sure,
100%.
While he's not here to defend himself, let's have a lot of fun with this.
Sure.
Last year they went 8-9. Obviously, Bill Belichick is back. Also back, but not from last year, is Bill O'Brien, a true offensive coordinator for the Patriots. That's going to be a new feeling. Projected starting offense, Mac Jones at quarterback, to which Joe has put trash next to his name. Bailey Zappi, because Joe wants him starting as the QB2. Rhamondre Stevenson at RB1. Pierre Strong likely at RB2. Juju Smith-Schuster at wide receiver 1. Devontae Parker at 2. Tyquan Thornton at 3. Kendrick Bourne at 4. And Kayshon Boutte at 5. Josh killing me with depth charts today.
You know what? I don't know it. Like, any of these guys could end up being the wide receiver 1, in all honesty. Like, I'm not that big of a fan of Juju. So I figure let's just name a whole bunch of wide receivers.
Yeah, hey, it's great. Everyone wants to hear me listing players. Tight end 1, Hunter Henry, and tight end 2, Mike Gesicki, with the white tight ends handshake emoji with Bill Belichick in the notes. Did Joe go in and add these later? Okay, I'm like, this is incredible. For the first time, I think all season at this point, all offseason at this point, Josh, we all have the same my guy. So, Josh, I'm going to let you get started on Rhamondre Stevenson.
I mean, let's be honest. Who the fuck else is in this offense?
Yeah, when you're listing 5 wide receivers because any of them could be the wide receiver 1, I suppose that lends itself.
I mean, honestly, like we all kind of felt that Rhamondre was kind of disrespected last year going into the season. He ended up with 210 carries, which I felt still wasn't enough. He finished 3rd among running backs in the NFL last year with 88 targets. And he's 227 pounds. The 2 guys ahead of him are like midgets compared to him, with Eckler and CMC both being under 205 or right around the 205 mark. Like, Stevenson is a big boy and he moves like he's 205. So why not get the football in his hands? Like, this was essentially what Bill O'Brien thought he was trading for back when he was running Houston, when he traded to go and get David Johnson.
Interesting.
This is the type of back that he wants. 2 out of the last 3 years in Houston, the running back commanded over 50% of the rushing attempts. And you don't really see that a lot in the NFL these days with these types of committees. Now, who else is behind Rhamondre? You've got a bunch of unproven guys. Pierre Strong was a rookie last year, kind of fell into the doghouse. Did, however, manage 10 yards of carry, so I guess that's pretty promising.
So he's the best running back in the NFL.
No. Exactly. So, he's shown that he has some pass catching chops going back to his time in college, but he went to school with Carson Wentz's alma mater, South Dakota State.
South Dakota State.
Or no, Dallas Goedert's alma mater.
Yeah.
Carson Wentz was at North Dakota State. So the level of competition there, you can say about it what you want. But Kevin Harris, who the fuck is that? These are all guys behind Rhamondre Stevenson. Give Rhamondre Stevenson the football. When I redid my projections after they, released James Robinson, RB3.
Yeah.
Give me all of the Rhamondre Stevenson in 2023. All.
And that's kind of been the theme of the last 2 or 3 shows. I don't know how he always gets brought up, but that's kind of what we've been saying, Howard, is right now in a 10-team league, he's going in the middle of the 3rd round. In a 12-team league, he's going with the first pick of the 3rd round. For folks who like to go robust RB, Rhamondre Stevenson might be the best thing to happen to the 3rd round in fantasy football.
I think he's a fantastic pick. I mean, he was my selection as my guy here off of this team. Yes, it's also because the rest of the team is completely bereft of talent, but more so to the point that, Josh started to say it right there. Bill O'Brien, he built his offense, with New England in that Erhardt-Perkins kind of way. And then when he left, when he left Belichick, then he started to kind of hybrid it with some spread formations as well. But it's predicated on the power run, and that's Stevenson 100%. So he's going to get the carries. I think that this is it's a fantastic spot for him. It's probably the best solo running back that the Patriots have had in a number of years.
Yeah, and I think you guys have both kind of put together with both what you guys said. He's their best pass catcher, probably on the whole team, wide receiver or otherwise, but then he's also their best runner. The carries are going to be there at 225 pounds. And then for him to be such a great pass catcher on top of that, this is looking like an unlimited touches situation.
Well, I don't know about unlimited.
Well, that's what I was kind of going to allude to. It was strange to me, the contract they gave James Robinson to begin with. And then for them to get out of it so quickly, I don't know what they're on the hook for. Obviously, they don't care. Last year, they drafted Strong and Kevin Harris in the same draft, one in the 4th round, one in the 6th round. 4th round's not the worst kind of draft capital. Is this a situation where could we potentially be overblowing the pass attempts? I think the carries are there with his size, but Howard, could we see them try to get Pierre Strong into the James White role, which was the immediate connection that was made to Pierre Strong when he was drafted?
Sadly, my boy Andrew Cooper keeps throwing the name Ty Montgomery at me. And, every time he says it, it's like a kick to the huevos rancheros. I'm not enjoying it. I'm not a Ty Montgomery fan, but Cooper's a diehard Patriots guy. He knows what they like to do in that system. And Pierre Strong is still, dealing with his learning curve. He didn't show enough last year to make that happen. So if Ty Montgomery stays on the field, he can pass block. So we're kind of looking at the possibility of him coming in on the 3rd round role and kind of, holding that James White. I'm not going to say he's going to hold the James White role because everybody seems to everybody says that, somebody says the James White role, and then everybody freaks out about it and they start overdrafting a piece of crap running back, being like, he's going to be the next James White. He's going to be the next James White. It's not going to happen like that, especially because it's Ty Montgomery, who's 31, 32 years old right now. There's no way that he's going to be able to handle that kind of, volume at all. But it's just something to think about in the sense that, yes, Rhamondre will be an every down back, but they're going to have to spell him every so often just to make sure that they don't run him into the ground right off the bat.
And I made the connection with Ty Montgomery. Instead of calling it the James White role, I think you're going to be looking at what was the Brandon Bolden role, where Bolden was kind of that special teams veteran on the team, knew Bill Belichick's system. And when James White was hurt, it was Bolden who came in. None of these younger players that the Patriots were trying to bring in. It was always Brandon Bolden because he did something that other people on the team couldn't do. And you bring up the pass blocking. I think that's going to be huge, especially with Pierre Strong, as you mentioned, on a learning curve. The last player I want to talk about, Josh and Howard, but Josh, I'm going to start with you. We kind of alluded this when we were talking to Faith in the group chat, is Faith was looking for who she should write about with the Patriots. And your first suggestion was Mac Jones. And Mac Jones had a relatively promising looking rookie year, but man, fell off of a cliff and took major steps backwards to the point where diehard Patriots fans are now calling for Bailey Zappi, Josh.
as Joe Zolo wrote literally in the show sheet.
Yes, exactly.
Look, Mac Jones was fine. And what you're looking for from Mac Jones is to run a competent offense and get the football into the hands of the playmakers. A lot of the issues I think that we saw last year was that he was forced to work with coaches that have no fucking clue what they're doing on the offensive side of the football. And it can be debated that they don't know what they're doing on every other side of the football either.
Yeah.
So, he knows what he's trying to do, but he doesn't have he's not trusted enough to be like, all right, I'm going to act like Tom Brady here, and I'm going to go through and change the plays. Like, we saw the types of screaming matches he was getting into on the sidelines with his coaches because he was frustrated with their lack of competency. He comes from Alabama with a smart head coach in Nick Saban. He worked with Bill O'Brien there at Alabama. He won a couple national championships, or one at the minimum, and kind of knows what he's doing. That's why he was drafted in the first round. You're not going to, unleash this guy for 150 rushing attempts, but he can sit back there and throw the football 550 times and get the ball to people that can make plays, a la Mike Gesicki, Rhamondre Stevenson, Juju Smith-Schuster, etc. So why not just let the guy play football? If you can put competent blockers in front of him, which Bill Belichick has somehow makeshifted offensive linemen with not a lot of draft capital, he can do okay. And I think that's what he's setting up for this year. I don't think we're going to see, a top 12 quarterback in Mac Jones from a fantasy perspective, but I can very easily see a scenario where he throws 26 touchdown passes.
Howard, I'm going to have you continue that thought.
I don't know if I want to continue 26 touchdown passes out there.
Who in the world would he throw these 26 touchdown passes?
Well,
are we counting pick sixes?
Well, let's see. We do have to wait and see what happens with DeAndre Hopkins. I personally don't think that Hopkins signs for less than what Odell Beckham signed with with Baltimore. But that seems to be the rumor, though, is that they're like, talking about him in like the $13 million range for a 1-year deal. So we'll see about that. Listen, I don't mind Mac Jones. I think he's a game manager. He's not a game breaker. He's not a game winner. To me, I'm not interested in him in fantasy outside of maybe as a third quarterback in a super flex league. But, I'm not gonna totally hate on the guy. And listen, obviously Bill O'Brien sees certain things that make him more comfortable and not make him more comfortable. He's pulling out all sorts of elements of the offensive scheme that they ran in Alabama, and that hopefully is going to kind of make Mac Jones a little bit more comfortable. So, could he throw 26 touchdown passes if DeAndre Hopkins is there on the team? Yes, I do believe that he would be capable of doing that. Is that going to happen? I'm not sure, but I agree with Josh that I think it's Mac Jones and not Bailey Zappi. I think the guys, the people out there who are clamoring for Bailey Zappi, I guess the best way to put it, if you want to go like old school Jets reference, when the Jets had, when Richard Todd was the Jets starting quarterback, the fans used to go bonkers over Pat Ryan, who was their backup, because Ryan was he was tougher. He would, he'd run the ball more actually. And you'd see that kind of energy. But I mean, it was like that kind of energy when the chips were already down and the Jets were already sucking. So, I think that Mac Jones will hold over on Bailey Zappi, and the people who are getting like all pro Zappi, I think are just kind of, because Mac Jones is not a game-breaking QB in an era where we see Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert. Like, I think that's just their, just kind of like their we miss Tom Brady sort of a thing.
Yep.
And the backup quarterback.
I mean, look, we saw Mac Jones throw 8 touchdowns to Hunter Henry.
Yeah.
It's not like he can't throw touchdown passes. Juju Smith-Schuster regularly scores like 7 touchdowns a year. If Mac Jones can find the two of them for their, highs in careers, that's 15.
He's halfway to his 26 already.
That's what I'm saying. So, I don't think it's crazy to assume that, Tyquan Thornton catches a couple, Parker catches a couple, he throws, 2 or 3 to the running backs. You get Gesicki in there for another 4 or 5. Like, I think that's 24 to 26 is very reasonable for Mac Jones.
I like it. The one Howard, you made it clear you didn't want to sit here and hate on Bailey Zappi, but you said something else interesting that Bill O'Brien's going to try to incorporate a little bit more of what we saw from Mac Jones in Alabama. The one thing I'd like to see is fewer rushing attempts. This guy does not average more than like 2 yards a carry, but is running the ball 40 times per year. You're banging your head against the door here. There's no reason to keep doing this. Let's use Rhamondre, Stevenson, and the running backs to run the football and strip away some of those carries. It's just a part of his game that I don't understand why they keep using it. If it's a leftover from the Cam Newton era where they just felt like they had to run their quarterback, let's stop it. Joe's sleeper, which is not feeling much like a sleeper anymore, is Pierre Strong. To be fair, he's free. RB 64, 208th pick of the draft, which means he's not going in any draft. But if you listen to this show, there's a good reason he might not be, because you might be looking at Ty Montgomery. Who knows? And his IDP player is safety Kyle Duggar. He didn't leave me any notes here, but I know Duggar is all over the field, always ball hawking, always involved with the tackles. That's the kind of thing you want in a DB, especially when you're looking for safeties. You want guys who are going to be involved in every play, and Duggar certainly does that. We're keeping the love letter theme going. So, Howard, who are you writing to on the New England Patriots?
Wow, we're going to write to our guy, okay? Okay, champ. You've got the potential to do something no Patriots running back has done since 2004. Be a true bell cow back for Bill Belichick. Sure, we've seen a few punks come and go. Stephen Ridley, LeGarrette Blount maybe come to mind. But if there's something fantasy owners have learned over the years, it's to never trust the Patriots running back. Until now, we hope. This is it. Your time to shine. You could be the first Patriots running back to rack up 300 carries in a season in 19 years, buddy. But obviously, there are a few things to keep in mind. Number one, protect the damn football at all times. You fumble, you're out. Nothing Bill hates more. Number two, no stupid mistakes. You would think a fumble is a stupid mistake, but I'm talking about following your blockers, your pass blocking, and all the other things fantasy owners don't think about because they're so caught up in yards and touchdowns. And third, stay on the straight and narrow, please. We have enough idiots in the NFL doing stupid things. No peds, no other drugs, no womanizing, no weapons. Keep your nose clean, Rhamondre. Do everything Bill tells you to do, and everything else will be cream cheese. And if you make a fool out of me for drafting you early, I'm going to haunt your dreams, fat ass. Don't screw it up. Love and kisses, Howard Beck.
Absolute perfection, because nobody holds a grudge like a fantasy football manager. Play it in simple.
Oh,
no, they don't.
My God.
Poetic justice to end the show. We started with the team Aaron Rodgers we're ending with the team that he left. So we are finishing up with the Green Bay Packers. Last year they went 8-9. They bring everybody back. So it's Matt LaFleur head coach, and he is also the play caller there. So no major changes expected except, at quarterback. So that could be interesting. QB1 is now Jordan Love, the first round pick from 4 years ago, finally ready to take the job. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon comprise one of the better RB duos in the NFL. Wide receiver 1, Christian Watson. Wide receiver 2, Romeo Doubs. Wide receiver 3, rookie Jaden Reed. Tight end 1, Luke Musgrave. Tight end 2, Tyler Kraft. Also both rookies. So lots of rookies on this offense to go with a brand new quarterback. We have our my guys. Josh and I agree it's Aaron Jones, but Bender, you got Romeo Doubs.
I do got Romeo Doubs. I think everybody's so in on Christian Watson that I think that because Watson's ADP in best ball, considering Jordan Love is his quarterback, I think is criminally high. I really do. And I love Christian Watson. I think he's great. But I think that, if I'm going to grab a receiver or, because even a player, because Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, I don't know how they're going to split that. I know that we keep getting told that A.J. Dillon's going to take over, but we always knew that Aaron Jones was Aaron Rodgers' guy.
Yeah.
And so now that Rodgers is gone, it's like, all right, do they actually try to maneuver with A.J. Dillon a little bit more? I think Doubs is, you're getting him for free basically in fantasy drafts. He's, I've seen him go
59. I just looked it up. He is absolutely free.
Crazy. So, and I think that he does a good job of stretching the field. And I think that, if Jordan Love is going to want to throw up some of those hero balls, like, he should. I think Romeo Doubs is going to be a very underrated asset. I probably like him in best ball more than I like him in seasonal fantasy, but I could definitely see once things do start to click a little bit for Jordan Love, if they start to click, that, I think Romeo Doubs is a guy who can put up some decent yardage, get some decent receptions, and score a few touchdowns. I'm not saying, more than like 5 touchdowns at the most, maybe is probably where I've got him. But yeah, I think that just because of the sheer value of the pick as the number 2 receiver on that system.
I think that's a big thing is the experience in knowing the system, I think is going to play in, Josh, because they let their veterans walk. Their veterans are their second-year wide receivers right now.
Yeah, when you look at this wide receiver room and the tight end room, it's all first or second year guys. Like, it is young, very young. Like, they're basically saying, all right, Jordan Love, you're going to learn on the fly right before we give you a 5th-year option, but you're going to do it and grow with the rest of the team. And it's like, I'm supposed to be proving myself right now. What's going on here? So it's definitely a bold strategy, Cotton, let me tell you, which kind of leads me into my guy, but we'll get to that in a second. But like, I kind of have the way that I was structuring the targets here. I was I didn't want to go like full Devontae Adams, but I didn't want to say, all right, I'm just going to give everybody like 90 to 80 targets. And then like, I'll just kind of let training camp like figure it out. Christian Watson was the higher draft pick. He had the much more explosive stretch of games last year. So I'm like, all right, I think Watson, they're going to go into it. They're going to think that Watson's the guy. But I don't see a reason why the second target on this team can't be 80-plus targets. And that's kind of right where I have Romeo Doubs right now. I have him about 82 targets, a little over 500 yards receiving, and 4 touchdowns, which, again, I don't think is a horrible stat line for a second-year guy. But we're going to see how this plays out because Doubs dealt with injuries last year. Watson dealt with injuries last year. Jaden Reed, rookie, smaller guy. Why would we be shocked if he only plays 10, 11, 13 games? You know what I mean? So, and for all we know, it's going to be the late round rookie, Dontavian Wicks or whatever his name is, that comes out for 120 targets because that's just the way that.
Well, I was going to say, and it's kind of what
played, right?
Well, it's kind of what we saw from Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs last year, where Watson took a little bit longer to develop because I believe he was dealing with an injury, maybe
hamstring injury. Hamstring.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. And then Doubs kind of like training camp was the darling in preseason, but then things kind of like evened out a little bit in the season. But Romeo Doubs did go through that amazing stretch before his injury from weeks 3 to 8, where he was a top 30 fantasy wide receiver. So the potential is there. The real question is it's Aaron Rodgers' offense versus the actual
Matt LaFleur's offense.
Yeah, versus what they've been wanting to run. And how is that going to involve spreading the ball around? You mentioned you didn't want to go full Devontae Adams with Christian Watson. But Josh, go ahead and keep going on Aaron Jones.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it like when I did my projections for the Packers last year, the one thing I was looking at, I'm looking at this wide receiver room, which, again, very similar this year. It's just a bunch of rookies that there's no real veteran. How are they going to develop? And I didn't really go like fully crazy on those projections. I had Aaron Jones as the leading target guy last year. For the last 4 years, he has been over 62 targets as a running back in this offense and led and set a career high last year with, I believe it was 78 targets. The thing that has killed Aaron Jones from a fantasy perspective the last 2 years, he only has 6 combined rushing touchdowns. But when you flip that over on the receiving side, he has 11 combined.
Did he have like 6 last year?
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like, you're seeing kind of that shift because they're getting A.J. Dillon so much more involved especially in the red zone. When you look at the rush attempts per this team in the 10 zone, it's almost a 2-to-1 split leaning A.J. Dillon's way. And we've seen how great Aaron Jones is as a red zone running back. Like 4 years ago, he had 16 rushing touchdowns. I'm fairly certain at least 11 of them were in the red zone. Like, he's that good inside the 5-yard line. So they're taking this shift into saying, A.J. Dillon, we want you to be that guy. And for as bad as A.J. Dillon was last year, are we really going to see him get much better? So I'm like, for me, it's just like, why not just lean on the veteran who we know is really good? He averages 5.1 yards per carry over his career. He was at, I believe, 5.5 per carry last year. Like, give this guy the football. He is freaking electric. Even if you're toning down his rush attempts because you want to bludgeon defenses with a 250-pound bruiser and A.J. Dillon, he's so efficient that even with 200 carries, he can hit over 1,000 yards. Give this guy the football. Let him do what he does in space, and he's going to be just fine for fantasy. I believe he's going right now around the RB 16 range, which to me is just criminal because he still has that RB 12 floor, in my opinion, amongst everybody else in fantasy.
We're going to talk a little bit about that. I was going to let Howard talk about it. And Howard, I was just going to have you talk a little bit about what Josh was touching on as well, which is the RB split. A lot of people look at it as sort of a bad thing, but if one of those guys is averaging over 5 yards a carry, I think it's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's the difference between fantasy and reality. In fantasy, we want to see a guy get 300 carries no matter what. In reality, you want to split it up. You want to keep, you always want to get fresh legs on the field. How many times have we seen, coaches turn to that? There's a reason that we don't have a strong number of bell cow backs out there anymore. It's a dying breed because they take such a pounding. Teams invest in these running backs. They don't, you don't see them go in the first round of drafts anymore because of the pounding that they take. But you still need strong high-end running backs in order to do the job and to get it going. So I think, from a fantasy standpoint, it's not good, but from a reality standpoint and for what you want from your team, yeah, you want that kind of a split. You want Aaron Jones to take as little of a pounding as possible. And if that means outside zone run scheme, and that means pass catching work, and all the between the tackle stuff goes to a big mamba jamba like A.J. Dillon and those, 72 quads that he's got taped to his legs, right? I think that's kind of what you have to do. So, and I think that's the thing, though, is like Josh is like, I'm not afraid to draft Aaron Jones. I'm not afraid of the split because we always see the split. We get it no matter what. So, if you're getting the guy who is going to be on the lion's share of those touches, well, then you're fine, and listen, again, the price is dropping for Aaron Jones or any of these guys in those backfields. So enjoy that discount.
And speaking of the discount, let's end the show where we started the show with Would You Rather. It's an interesting group that Aaron Jones is going around in fantasy football right now. So he is, as of this moment, according to Fantasy Pros, going off as the RB 17, 52nd overall. At 51st overall is Joe Mixon. Howard, Joe Mixon or Aaron Jones?
Well, I'm in on Joe Mixon only because there's really, with Samaje Perine gone, there's really not a whole lot left in that backfield. We're going to have to sit and monitor the situation. I know that the Bengals want Mixon to kind of restructure his contract and help him out a little bit. We'll have to see what kind of a team player Joe Mixon is. Obviously, his character is under fire right now, and there's been a lot of talk of him getting released. But if you're just saying that, Aaron Jones versus Joe Mixon, straight up as is, where are you going? I'm going Mixon as the lead back in a much, much more explosive offense.
I completely agree. I think the fantasy world will collectively stop holding their breath on Joe Mixon when Dalvin Cook signs somewhere. I think that's kind of the worry right now,
right?
Because that was one of the rumors when Dalvin Cook first sounded like he was available, is that the Bengals were going to cut Mixon and move over to Cook, Josh.
It can be an explosive offense all you want. Mixon's efficiency has been in the shitter.
Yeah, I don't know that we can have two different.
Like I want nothing to do with that at all. Like I barely have Mixon as a top 20 running back. So give me Aaron Jones all day.
I'm on the Mixon side of things again. I all the reasons Howard said, and I agree with Josh. The efficiency is not there. I think you're going to have more touchdowns opportunities out of the Cincinnati Bengals. This one's interesting because if they hadn't done what they did in the draft, I don't think he would be this far down. Kenneth Walker is going one slot ahead of Aaron Jones. So you got your choice between Seattle's sophomore running back and Aaron Jones there, Howard.
I'd probably go Aaron Jones, actually. I mean, we got to see what Walker's like coming back from the injury. They draft Zach Charbonnet. So, you kind of figure that he's likely going to be in that mix for carries. And listen, here's the funny thing too. Like, I get it. Everybody knows that Pete Carroll loves to run the football, but, he brings in Shane Waldron last year, and Geno Smith had the 6th most passing attempts in the NFL last season. So that either Shane Waldron has converted Pete Carroll into being a little bit more of a balanced passing attack and not just run. If that's the case, then that's going to pull away from Kenneth Walker, who again is also recovering from injury. So I'll take Jones.
Josh, that's exactly what I was going to ask, Josh. Is the injury playing into this? Is Zach Charbonnet playing into this? Why is Kenneth Walker so low, and who would you rather have?
It's Aaron Jones for me. I mean, we go back to the whole talk of how much more is a target worth to a running back versus a carry. And if you're telling me that Aaron Jones has the potential for 70 plus targets, I'm going to take him over so many running backs. So it's Aaron Jones for me by a landslide.
Yeah, and so Kenneth Walker last year in 15 games still only hit 35 targets with, as Howard brought up, them throwing the ball 6th most in the NFL. So it still was not working its way to the running backs whatsoever. And Seattle got a lot better at wide receiver this year again. So it doesn't look like it's going to work Walker's way. It's Aaron Jones for me as well. And then when you start looking at the guys going after him, I think this is where, so like with those guys, there was a little bit of a debate whether Jones should be mentioned with them. These guys, there's not much debate for me anyway. And the next one is J.K. Dobbins. Same round, but 6 picks later. Aaron Jones or J.K. Dobbins, Howard?
Aaron Jones, it's not even debatable in my eyes. It really is. I don't believe in Todd Monken's air raid offense. I don't believe in what they're trying to do over there in Baltimore right now. And, I think Dobbins is, I mean, aside from the fact that he has trouble staying on the field, you still have Gus Edwards there. They're not going to run as many, they'll run some RPO, but it's just not going to. Lamar Jackson loves to run the football on his own. And if you're going to take away rushing attempts from that offense because you're, trying to go so pass heavy and utilize the wide receivers and stuff, I think it's going to be more. You're going to do that at the expense of your running backs and not at the expense of Lamar Jackson's own rushing, which he loves to do anyway. So it's not even close for me. I'll take Jones all day.
I couldn't agree more. One of the things when I was doing research for an article was even J.K. Dobbins' good games weren't all that great in the seasons when he was playing. Like, he's not as boom as you would like out of a guy who is certainly boom or bust, Josh.
You can fill me with as much coach speak as you want that Todd Monken's going to spread the football around and they're going to target the running backs more. Until I see it, I'm not buying into it. And, we've talked about this ad nauseum on this show. When running quarterbacks drop back to pass, they are not looking to dump it off to a running back in the flat. They're going to take that football themselves and go make a play. And that's what Lamar Jackson does.
There you go. So we're all in on Jones there. Last one I found was interesting because he's on a new team after having a pretty decent season last year. Miles Sanders and the Carolina Panthers, or Aaron Jones, Howard?
Aaron Jones for me. I love Miles Sanders. I grabbed Miles Sanders last year because everyone was like, no touchdowns. He sucks. I love the situation that he was in with the Eagles as they started to, that offense started to blossom. And he had such a great year with them, 1,200 plus yards. I don't even know how many touchdowns he had.
11.
It was more than said, so I feel good about it. However, now he's going into a situation in Carolina where the offensive line is not as strong. There are other running backs who go between the tackles a little better there, like Chuba Hubbard and Blackshear. But what you're dealing with here also is the fact is that the RPOs worked so beautifully in Philadelphia because you were like, oh, is Hurts going to run or is Miles Sanders going to run? And so you always had to keep that spy on Jalen Hurts. You don't have that with Bryce Young. He's not the running quarterback that Jalen Hurts is, and he's not going to be able to be as successful with that. And I think Frank Reich kind of knows that as, in the scheme that they're putting together. So I think Miles Sanders, I think he kind of pulls back. I think he's the primary pass catching back over there, but I do worry about what his full carry load is going to look like this season. So I'll take Jones.
Josh?
Yeah, it's pretty easy Jones for me. I am a big Miles Sanders guy.
I was wondering if you would go contrarian on that one.
Loved him coming out of Penn State, and his rookie year in Philly really did get me hyped, especially for what he was able to bring as a pass catcher. But he really has not gotten better as a pass blocker. And, we've seen, Peterson shy away from using him in those roles. Nick Sirianni shy away from using him in those roles. So I'm hoping that getting reunited with Deuce Staley, and, I know he never worked with Frank Reich, but Reich is going to run a very similar system to Peterson. But working with Staley in that running back room, hopefully can get him back to a point where he can at least be respectable on passing downs, because that to me is what's going to drive those targets up into that 50+ range that we saw his rookie season.
And I think that goes back to what we've all kind of been saying, is that, the targets are so much more valuable, and we know they're going to Jones. And so that's why I think it's Jones there. That happens to be the reason I did the game here, is that happens to be Joe's sleeper, that he said it felt like Jones is going just a little bit too low. And I think we all tend to agree. We would take him ahead of the guys that are going around him. His IDP player is another safety, this one coming over from the Houston Texans. So it's going to be his first year in Green Bay, Jonathan Owens. And we are going to end our team talks with the final love letter from Mr. Howard Bender.
Oh, all right. For the final love letter. And again, thanks so much for this, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I love that I get to write these letters. So you're Jordan Love. All right, buddy. Only the sun. I'm sure it's been an aggravating 2 years for you, having to endure the Aaron Rodgers retiring, unretiring saga, along with him likely being a total dick to you, and even though it wasn't your fault. But that now goes into the rearview mirror, and it's your time. You've had 2 years learning this system. You have a supportive ground game in Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, and most of all, you have some legitimate receiving weapons with Christian Watson, Romeo, Doubs, and a slew of the other youngsters like Jaden Reed and that hodgepodge group of tight ends. Maybe, just maybe, we lower expectations since this is built around youth, but there should really be no excuses for you. You need to show up, and you need to show up well. If I'm being honest, I actually don't care. I don't have you in any leagues, and the only person on your team I have is Watson, and that's best ball. So maybe just don't ignore him on the regular. But the NFL and its fans can be very unforgiving. So if you don't look good after 2 years of learning on the bench, then your history, a dream that once was. To paraphrase the classic rom-com Hitch, it's not your job to make us like it, Jordan. We already do. It's your job not to mess it up. Love, Howard Bender.
Love it. I don't know that there could be a more succinct view of Jordan Love. Like, I don't care. I don't have you anywhere.
That was gold.
I don't. I mean, I wish every NFL player mountains of success. I really do. I root for the guys who are on my teams. I root for my New York Jets. For somebody like Jordan Love, who I just, I've never really believed in that much to begin with. It is what it is.
I just did an article for Football Guys where I said 8 or 10 players I'm rooting for. And I'm rooting for Jordan Love mainly because I didn't like Aaron Rodgers. So I'm like, now I just want to see this guy succeed. So it worked out well for me there. Guys, that is a wrap. Bender, an enormous thanks. Everybody should know who you are and what you're working on, but please let them know where to find you, anything you're working on right now. This is your time, man.
You can find me all over the pages at fantasyalarm.com. We're running a 7-day free trial for our draft guide and our subscription service, so go check that out over there. You can hear me on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. And then, dude, I'm all over the Better Sports Network. I do daily betting shows. We're starting up a new morning show tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. I got to be 8 a.m. Eastern. I got to be camera ready at 8 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. I live in the West Coast, so it's going to be an early rise for me. But you can also follow me on Twitter at RotoBuzzGuy, like it says right here.
Love it. Howard, always an absolute pleasure having you on. Could not have asked for a better show for our 300th episode. And because it's our 300th episode, Josh, stealing your bit, he also has a love letter today.
Yeah, I had to have a little fun here, right? So I first just want to say to the fans, thank you for 300. We began the show with no real goals, just the love of talking fantasy football. Because of people like you, we had a reason to keep going. We've grown from one show to a network full of them, and it's all because of you, the fans. Because of people like you, we've had the opportunity to meet some amazing individuals in this fantasy football space, partnering with Joe, Ryan Weiss, Mr. Howard Bender. It's because of you, there's women of fantasy football. So thank you for being the reason that we are here today. Thank you for being the reason that 300 is a thing. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for riding this ride with us. We love you 300. And soon, to paraphrase my Marvel fandom, we'll love you 3,000.
I love it. Wonderful job, Josh. I also feel like, as a special tribute to the 300th episode, I just want to personally apologize to Josh for making him do half those shows with Joe Zolo by himself. I didn't come on until later in the game, so I know it was a rough first half, but I hope the second half got bigger. And Joe, we miss you, buddy. We're sorry this was the episode you had to miss, but I know you're out there doing some real work. So, folks, that's the end of the episode. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're not subscribed to the page, hit that damn button. It's not that hard, and you're going to make sure you don't miss any of the great content. We have my show, Mock It Like It's Hot, every Monday, except for this upcoming Monday because I'm taking the week off, but you guys will be all right. We just knocked out our final rookie draft of the season this morning with Julia Papworth, and so you can find that on our YouTube page now, and we'll have redraft going for the rest of the year starting in July. Her Story in the Making, also on the Better Sports Network with the wonderful Britt Flynn. That's going to have a new episode coming out on June 27th. And we, of course, have Who's Your Caddy every Tuesday. That is our golf DFS show. We don't just do football here. Josh mentioned the growth. We started off one show. Now we're even covering more than one sport. And of course, we are in Dynasty. We have our Dynasty After Party show every Sunday at 9:30. They just covered 6 teams for their Look Inside series. They're following along with us. That's the end of the show, folks. We thank everybody for joining us. Josh, do you have any parting words?
I do not. Here's to the next 300, baby. It's going to be a lot of fun keeping this train rolling. And Howard, can't thank you enough, man. I appreciate you coming on board and being a huge mentor to me in this space, man.
Absolutely.
Again, thanks for having me. I love what you guys do. 100%. Thank you.
You can follow Club Fantasy on all the socials at Club Fantasy FFL. Always remember, the defense wins championships. Offense wins fantasy football. We will see you next Wednesday. Have a good night.